Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the fog. Thick, coal-stained London fog. The kind that tastes faintly of iron and disappointment. You're trudging through it, coat collar up, boots squeaking on slick cobblestones, clutching your briefcase like it holds the last shreds of your dignity. You've been working far too much, chasing a promotion that never seems to arrive, and now your doctor, who looks like he hasn't blinked since the Crimean War, has declared that your ambition itself is making you ill. Yes, apparently you've caught a bad case of overexerted nerves, and the only prescription is a seaside nap. You'll probably won't survive this, not because you're sick, but because you'll die of boredom waiting for the train to Brighton. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand in the doctor's consulting room, walls covered with oil portraits of men who look vaguely constipated from too much decorum. The physician peers over his spectacles and murmurs something about ambition fatigue, a term so perfectly Victorian it should be embroidered on a pillow. The cure, he insists, is sea air. Fresh, briny, morally upright sea air. You must go, at once, to the coast. You will rest, you will breathe, and above all, you will stop thinking about quarterly reports. Outside, London is gasping. The Industrial Revolution has filled its lungs with soot and caffeine. Clerks collapse from nervous prostration, mothers swoon from domestic hysteria, and students burn out from over-intellectual exertion. Historians still argue whether these were real diseases or just clever excuses to take a month off. But in the medical journals of the 1850s, ambition had become an epidemic. Victorian doctors, armed with Latin vocabulary and untested theories, began noticing a troubling pattern. The more people worked, the worse they felt. The urban brain, they reasoned, was overheating. Too much coal smoke, too many telegrams, too many ideas. One London physician even warned that unceasing mental industry could shrivel the nerves like overboiled cabbage. So the cure was simple. Remove the patient from industry. Replace ambition with idleness. Soot with salt air. Telegraph clicks with seagull cries. You, poor overachiever, are to be exiled to the seaside until your pulse forgets what deadlines are. You pack your things, wool trousers, a half-read novel, perhaps a bottle of patent tonic, promising fortitude and calm. You board the train south, joining a carriage full of fellow invalids, all staring wistfully out the window as if the landscape itself were medicine. The fog thins, the air lightens, and soon the gray skeletons of factory chimneys give way to glittering water. The scent of salt hits you like a revelation, harsh, clean, oddly moral. The Victorians adored this smell. They believed that sea air was charged with negative ions, though no one knew what an ion was. Some said it was the electric soul of the ocean. Others swore that it purified the lungs and polished the moral character. There was even a theory that each crashing wave released vital oxygen, which could realign the nerves like tuning forks. By the time you reached the shore, your doctor's words echo like a sermon. Rest, breathe, repent your ambition. You walk along the promenade, shoes crunching on sand that smells faintly of rot and progress. Gentlemen with monocles nod solemnly. Ladies in bonnets parade with parasols the size of wind turbines. Everyone here is pretending to be sick and very proud of it. The seaside, you realize, isn't just a destination, it's a diagnosis. Every cough, every sigh, every fluttering heart is now attributed to nerves. And in the hierarchy of Victorian respectability, being nervously unwell is far preferable to being merely lazy. You sit on a wooden bench, the kind that creaks like an old conscience, and watch the tide crawl in. Somewhere behind you, a brass band plays a hymn to health, its notes scattering like gulls. You can't help but smile at the absurdity. Ambition made you ill, so now you're being told to nap your way back to virtue. A breeze brushes your face, tasting of salt and fish and freedom. You take a deep breath. The doctor might be right. There's something about this air, sharp and ancient, that clears the mind. Or maybe it's just the first time you've stopped running long enough to notice you're alive. The first morning by the sea feels strange. You wake to the rhythm of waves instead of carriage wheels, and for a moment you forget where you are. The air seeps through the curtains like a cool ghost, smelling faintly of salt and boiled eggs from the downstairs breakfast room. Outside, the seaside promenade stretches into a hazy horizon, a watercolor of parasols, horse-drawn bathing carts, and women in stiff dresses pretending they're not cold. You're in a Victorian spa town, one of dozens, sprouting along Britain's coasts like coral after a storm. Brighton, Scarborough, Margate, each one promising to heal your ambition through the sacred alchemy of sea air. Doctors have turned poets, prescribing a fortnight of bracing breezes and moral simplicity. They truly believed the ocean could rinse not only the lungs, but the soul. By mid-century, the seaside cure had become a national obsession. Pamphlets fluttered across London like seagulls, declaring that the seaside strengthens the moral fiber and cools the overheated imagination. In other words, too much drive could give you a fever, and only idleness could break it. You stroll along the promenade, coattails flapping as nurses push invalids in wicker wheelchairs, and children chase hoops that always seem to roll toward the water. The sea looks metallic, more pewter than blue, and it reflects the sky like a tired mirror. Yet the air really does feel different. It's sharp, almost medicinal. You take another deep breath and decide not to admit that maybe, just maybe, the doctors were on to something. The sea air craze began around the 1830s, when the upper classes, growing tired of city pollution, decided that salt water was morally superior to smoke. The first seaside hospitals were established for tuberculosis and melancholia. Patients were told to walk slowly, eat fish, and stare at the horizon until their ambitions shrank to manageable proportions. Historians still argue whether the health benefits were physical or simply the result of getting a paid vacation. Still, there was something scientific sounding about it all. Early Victorian physicians theorized that ocean breezes contained minute particles of iodine and ozone, two words guaranteed to sound medicinal even when poorly understood. Newspapers published letters from gentlemen who claimed their nerves were purified and their tempers softened after a week of salt exposure. One even swore that a single stroll along the coast had reversed 20 years of nervous tension. He died a year later, but perhaps blissfully relaxed. You wandered toward the pier, listening to gulls and a distant clip-clop of horses. Nearby, a man in a striped coat sells seaside tonic, guaranteed to contain real sea. He scoops the water from a bucket, fills a bottle, corks it, and pockets your shilling. You're not sure if it's a scam or performance art. Either way, the Victorians loved a good placebo with a dash of faith. In the boarding houses, doctors made their rounds like spiritual guides. They prescribed schedules that sounded suspiciously like forced leisure. Morning walks before breakfast, light reading by the fire, naps after tea, and absolutely no thinking about work. Overexcitement, they warned, was the true enemy of the modern mind. To rest was not weakness, it was medicine. You pause near the shore, where the waves collapse like tired lungs. Behind you, a group of invalids sit wrapped in blankets, faces turned toward the water, as if awaiting divine Wi-Fi. One woman knits without looking, Another stares unblinkingly at the horizon. You imagine the quiet conversations drifting between them. How long have you been here? What did your doctor say? Have you stopped wanting things yet? There's a gentle absurdity to it all. The industrial nation that conquered half the planet now trying to nap its way to inner peace. And yet, underneath the irony, something tender glows. These were people who had worked themselves sick chasing progress, who didn't have the vocabulary for burnout or anxiety. The sea became their therapist. By afternoon, the light grows warmer, gold-tinted, and slow. Children laugh somewhere down the beach, and the sound folds into the waves until you can't tell one from the other. You walk farther, boots leaving shallow prints that the tide lazily erases.